Thank you, Tripti.
Yep, thanks.
I didn't know that. It gives me the option of leaving the meeting when someone
Yes.
starts recording. Huh?
Tripti, thanks for hosting.
I'm gonna try, but I think it's gonna be pretty easy.
Well, if it's easy, someday somebody can teach me.
Well, we're gonna work on that.
That
next.
might be a lot of work.
No, I don't think so. It's not.
I was on another Google meeting earlier today, and it said I was muted because there was too many people on the call, and there was like 6, and I was like kind of offended. What? Am I one too many? What? It's kind of hurt by the whole thing, but it suddenly fixed itself. Yeah.
I mean, I've whether it's Microsoft Teams or Zoom. I mean, I've participated in thousands of these meetings, but I've never had to host one. I keep dodging, you know.
Yeah. Ended up
All right, let's
dying.
see. We are at 6:31, so we'll give it about a minute or two more, and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Naomi, are you there?
I am.
Hi, Naomi.
I am indeed. I'm finishing dinner.
Well,
Hi, Naomi.
go
Yeah.
ahead and mute again. I just wanted to check. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you all.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Matt, good to see you. Mike, glad for joining us. Oh, somebody already, Chad, you've already got your hand raised. I am impressed. I've never seen a hand raised that quickly.
Wow, I don't even see it. See, I don't know what's going on.
All right.
All right. One more minute and we'll get started.
No worries.
Pete, is this the first time you've joined us?
Yes,
Well, welcome.
thank you.
Yeah, there's a few new people on here, so that's always
We
great.
love having new people.
Yeah. Looks like we've got
We've got 13 so far. Hey, Keith,
Yeah.
are you on? I see a 303-477 number. Is that you?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Thank
And
you.
I might, since you've allowed, wake me up. I did listen to the honey PCD discussion on Tuesday
Oh, nice.
of the city initiatives, and I can give a little report of that if there's time at the end of the meeting, or if it's even necessary. That meeting also that discussion was about 45 minutes long, of the whole list of city initiatives that are underway or soon to be underway. And it was about a 45-minute discussion, and it was pretty interesting.
Keith, do you know?
Others could. I'm sorry?
Keith, do you know if they recorded it? I assume they did, because I'd be curious to hear that.
I asked early on whether it was going to be recorded, and Tim, I hope this wasn't impolite of me, he said, well, why don't we try it? I've never done it before. And he pushed a button, and I get the robot voice saying this meeting is being recorded. So
Right.
it was recorded. There were only a few participants, I think fewer than are on tonight's call that you've just initiated. Some I recognized, Tim Burrs, Michael Tavel, perhaps David Brame. They didn't introduce themselves. Paul Tamburello and one or two others. It was a rather intimate meeting, I would say.
Well, these
as
PCD
zoning
meetings can be
discussions
intimate.
Go.
Great.
I'll ask for the recording and share it with, our board here, our PCD.
I'm sure Tim would. I think Tim would be glad to know that others are interested up here.
Oh, no doubt.
Thank you for that.
All right. So we're 4 minutes after the hour, after the half hour. So let's go ahead and get started. Thanks to everybody who's joining us. We've got some new faces, which is fantastic. I don't have a lot of announcements, so we're able to move on pretty quickly. Unfortunately, we did have one cancellation. The Inca Street property, their architect was sick and not able to present tonight, so they're going to postpone until December. So that's the good news is, the silver lining is that we've got more time for the properties that are in front of us. So with that, our first topic of the night is Federal Street, and Steve has put together what I think is a really fantastic presentation. So I'll turn it over to him and let him take us through it. And Steve, I would say that I know you'd said you thought you could get through it in 10 minutes. That'd be great. I think in total, we certainly have no problem giving you 35 or 40 minutes with question.
Thank you. Well, before I get started, I just want to note that who else is on the call with our team. I'm working with KLM Colorado, who is the essential owner of the LLC that owns the property. Mike Kashat is on from KLM, and along with Pat Flanagan is here. And then our architect is Jim Keaveney. He's on as well. And you can see they're all there. And with that, I'll jump into the slideshow. Got some other stuff we can show you, like a recent building on Federal that was built. Google Earth may help to shed some light on ideas and things. So if you need any other questions, we'll get to those later. But let me move through this. You know, we always like to let people know that we're reaching out to others, and our background here. I don't know if you guys know where Harkness Heights RNO is these
Steve?
days, but yes.
Steve, your presentation isn't visible at this point. Do you need to do something to make it visible so you're sharing your screen?
Let me go back and make sure it is sharing. I thought I had set it up.
I know it works because we
Yeah, we did it once.
saw it a few minutes ago, but it's not showing right now.
Okay.
There we
how's that?
go.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry
Thanks,
about
Steve.
that. So there's
4138,
our title page.
4130.
Sorry.
We're talking about townhomes at North Federal Boulevard.
Correct.
Yeah, 4120.
Okay.
It's actually, you know, the plan is to do 10 townhomes there. That's what we're thinking. But, you know, the real question is whether you could support rezoning of this area is the immediate question. And we're happy to work with you on any type of things to help you come to that conclusion, whether you'd support it or not. A little background on our outreach. Brun decided not to talk about this with us out of their boundaries. The city lists Harkness Heights RNO as official RNO in this area too, but we got no responses from them. If you guys have any contacts with them, we'd be happy to reach out to them again. But I get the feeling they may be defunct or inactive, might be a better word. And
They're not inactive. I can make an introduction if necessary.
thank you. I've sent them multiple emails. All right, that'd be great. So, and otherwise, we've held pre-application meeting and we've talked to a few people about it, but we have not made a submittal, of course, an application yet. We wouldn't do that without getting support from you and other neighbors. Now, history-wise, we wanted to let you know that, you know, this is an interesting site in the sense that it is an office building right now. Small office building. It's been there. It was been there in 2010 when the city rezoned. Why the city chose to make the property to the south commercial, but not this property is, you know, no one seems to know the history there. I've asked, the city doesn't know, but sorry, I'm sliding. And that's just an interesting note. It got zoned, the surrounding residential character, which is UC1. When KLM looked at this property, they realized that it is zoned residential, and they felt like 2 single-family units and 2 ADUs might be a tough sell along a street like Federal Boulevard, and they wanted to explore this option of rezoning. You can see here in the map, the property is the red, and then the property to the south is zoned UMX2X. These are zoned UMX3, while UMX2X over here on the west side of Federal. And then all this yellow is the SUC1. My cursor's not being very friendly. This was the land uses that's identified by the city when we talked to them at their pre-application conference. Our property is in the middle here, a neutral, and theoretically not it's a it's a office use, similar to the south. Not sure why they put two colors. Up here you have multi-unit, or these are townhomes. I should say there are a series of several duplexes and houses put together. I'm not sure how many units, maybe 8 on this property. We've got the church here, we've got a school here in blue. The interesting part that I'm going to get into in this blocks is in this area, the platting pattern is very unusual. And this gray strip back here has one small garage and otherwise is just used for parking cars, which I raise only because as far as if you're looking at Federal Boulevard as a more of a commercial area, it's interesting to see that there's a buffer between the traditional residential character and the possibly more commercial character of Federal. And I'll speak about that a little bit more here. As you can see, on the left is the parcel maps as defined by the assessor's office. And what you've got here is these long lots. There's actually about 9 blocks in this, right in this area, that have this unusual platting pattern. And you probably have seen it, I think, in other parts of Sunnyside have carriage lots at the internal of their block. This is a little like that, but different. 2 double alleys, a cross alley, and then these long lots here, which are typically zoned residential. But you can see here, over in the aerial of behind our property, it is not residential in character. We really, how that came to be, we're not clear at all. But it's, again, a unique circumstance. I wanted to actually, if we get into the Google Earth, I'll show you. There's about a 3 by 3 block area on this part of Federal that has this unusual platting pattern. And you guys might know, as being in the neighborhood, the history of that platting pattern. And it's kind of interesting because it is quite different from the standard across the city, and even the unique stuff you see at Highlands. Naomi may know the story there. Anyhow, moving on, thinking that maybe this platting pattern and some of the activity on Federal would be conducive, we looked at a plan that could accommodate townhomes. And the first idea was this one that Jim has designed, at 5 units facing Federal, and then 2 more units to the rear of 9 total. You can see that we want to provide adequate parking for all these units, and we can see these how these are shown here: 2 cars for each unit. Although, I'm sorry, not everyone has 2 cars. These look like have 1 car, but the idea is to try to accommodate a row house form that faces the street. It's not a slot home, and it also does not negatively impact the alley and the houses to the rear. I think it presents a pretty attractive streetscape along Federal, and we hope you agree, but we want to get your thoughts, of course. And I know we had talked about mapping the zoning to the south, and the real difference that we looked at was 2-story row homes are very, very difficult to make livable, build to a size, and accommodate parking that people are looking for these days. The heights, of course, are the biggest thing. And what we were hoping for, that you'll agree, is that 3 stories is a little bit more livable and provides a more attainable housing, a more appropriate association with Federal, especially as you look down, up and down Federal. 3 stories is not a large impact, of course, to the neighborhood. And similarly, across the alley, 3 stories is not a real negative impact versus 2 stories. So, and this is the interesting part that I would enjoy talking to you guys about, because we know that the plan consistency that the cities looks at and that you as a neighborhood look at, like what are your goals in this area, is unsettled at this time. I mean, I think it's somewhat disappointing that Blueprint didn't think about Federal a little differently when it was written, or the comp plan. But it is what it is, and I kind of, perhaps maybe the neighborhood weighed in and didn't want to change Federal. I wasn't there at the time, maybe others know. But what's interesting is that there isn't a lot of plan support or opposition to this idea in any of the city's plans. Your plan, of course, is being updated, and I thought I had a slide on, here. I'll speak to your current plan, but I know it's outdated, right? It's 1992, and you're currently in the process of updating it. And you've told me, and I've heard from others, that you are contemplating some changes to Federal Boulevard in that plan, but we're quite ahead of that. And I realize that's a challenge. And we want to recognize that. What we hope you see is that we're not proposing anything really crazy here. We're not pushing the envelope in something that wouldn't fit at all on Federal, or is, let's say, 5 stories in a major up zone. We're really looking for something of a residential character that fits within the neighborhood and the surrounding area fairly well. So we're hoping that you'll see that, this isn't a crazy step above and beyond your planning exercise. It may be something you come to over the course of the next 2 years when you look at your neighborhood plan again, but you may come to something of even more dense along Federal. But we think this is a balance and not a big ask. But we don't want to assume that, and I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Cool. Steve, thank you. I thought that was a great presentation. Catherine is the first question up, and then Trupti right afterwards.
I wanted to find out on the site plan that you're proposing, are you thinking about having any setback from Federal to accommodate a wider sidewalk?
Well, here, let me,
I may be able to answer that. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Keaveney. I'm the architect. And currently we are showing a 20-foot setback, but you are correct. Most likely with transportation right away, et cetera, there will probably be a widened setback. Of course, that's something that we will get more information from when we have our first meeting with the city. And I believe it's, and I'm sorry, I think it was Catherine that asked that question, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, right.
So what are you contemplating for sidewalk dedication in that area?
That's a little bit hard to foresee a little bit, but it, currently I'm guessing it's could be another maybe 5 feet or so, really wherever that sidewalk exists as compared to the existing property line. But usually it's in that first initial concept meeting that we do get that information from the city and right away that we haven't gone to that step yet.
yeah. And I think, Jim, one thing we could anticipate is that the city standard seems to be nowadays that you will have an 8-foot sidewalk and an 8-foot tree lawn. So we may want to plan for that.
Right.
From the edge of the property line. It depends. I think we would probably give up 3 and 8, maybe up to, at worst case, 11. But I don't know if, what they're thinking about busy streets like Federal as well. It might be a little different.
Yeah, I know it's usually non-negotiable. It's something that, we'll get more information from the city, but you're about right, Steve. So it could be 5 and 8, so a total of 13. But really, I think it's, again, we wouldn't get those numbers until later on, but we would definitely push that building back as required when that time comes.
And you made this
beyond requirements. Do you have any input?
I'm glad to hear that you're thinking 16 feet at a minimum. I think you need it for tree canopy and for getting the sidewalk off of the busy street, the detached sidewalk off of the busy street.
Right. Good point.
Trupti?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. So maybe a couple of questions, but the first one, Steve, I know you mentioned this a couple of times, and I know I was not involved in any of this. So where did you hear that SUNI is discussing a plan for Federal? And I've heard you say that twice because we talked initially as well, and I just didn't know where you got that information, because SUNI has not been discussing federal specifically. And obviously outside of whatever comes out of the neighborhood planning initiative. Other than that, there is the whole federal transit corridor study, right? The whole
Yeah.
BRT versus not BRT. That's not settled, how, I think there are people who want BRT, but and it's going to change in different portions of federal. So I think the transit study, corridor study piece may be something you guys want to kind of be closer to or think about as you guys are thinking about the setback and those kinds of things. So what are they planning for?
Okay. And Tripti, I'm sorry, as I recall, I might have heard that you would be looking at federal as part of your local area plan updating work.
Okay,
I didn't think maybe you'd focus exclusively on it at all, but I think it might have been from the planner I worked with on the pre-application conference from the city, that he thought, he knew that you were doing a new neighborhood plan, and in fact, the Northwest area plan, and there would be discussions of federal in that context.
yeah, no, that part is true. And then
Okay.
the other thing was, I know there's new affordability, work that's happening through city council. And I can't remember if, and Naomi, you might know, because I know Amanda just sent out something about some of that work and how to get involved. But was it, if it's 7+, there's a linkage fee? And what's the number with the number of units where a percentage will have to be affordable?
Right now, I know it's 8 units. When you go above 8,
Okay.
you have yeah.
So with where you guys are, you kind of hit that if you go to 9, right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so you guys are thinking 1 affordable at that point?
That might probably be the resulting outcome. Yeah, if that's where, if we're subject to the rules, which is very likely, that I'd have to look at them again, and we haven't really given that a lot of deep thought. But we know that I was looking at it earlier today in a meeting, and I know it was at 8, and it probably is about 1 unit requirement.
And it would depend on when the eventual ordinance is adopted and takes effect versus the timeline of this project.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's true, but I think as a neighborhood, as you're coming to us to ask us to give you something, we might be coming back to you saying,
Absolutely.
why not consider this before it comes down instead of, like, hey, we're sliding by. I mean, affordability is an issue and it's something we want, and we wanted it yesterday, not next year. So it is something that I would ask you guys to consider as part of this project,
And
just-
Steve, I would really echo Trupti's comments and say that for the 4 years I've been involved, affordability and development is really seen much more positively by the entire neighborhood. Even if you go a little bit above and beyond, just that's what I've seen.
No, we've definitely looked at that. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mike or Pat about that, but I think it's a fair ask.
Trupti, anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much. At least for now. And I have to apologize. I did not get a chance to look at this stuff earlier on. I just came back from vacation. So I may have other questions after actually reviewing this a little bit more.
Okay.
Thank you.
So others on the call, comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Mike Cachet with KLM Construction, part of the ownership group, and just to kind of reiterate what Steve said, I would definitely think that if that's something you guys are interested in us providing 1 unit as affordable housing, it's definitely something we'll look into, and definitely something we'll consider seriously. So I just want to make sure you heard that from the ownership group.
Thanks, Mike.
I see a new hand gone up. Matthew.
That entire facade brick in that rendering, or are we just looking at the front being brick?
Actually, it's going to be all brick. If there is another rendering that actually shows the side as well. So as a longtime resident of Harkness Heights, I lived very close to this property. There's a lot of homes with brick, and that's something that we want to kind of keep that same character of the neighborhood.
I think most of us would very much applaud the brick, and thank you for that. And
Is that,
especially going beyond the facade.
can I ask, would that be included as a condition of approval from SUNI side? Because typically stuff like brick gets value engineered out of a project. Would your team be committing to not do that?
That would be a question for maybe Mike or.
Yeah, I think it's definitely not something we would rule out. This project, two of the ownership group, we live right in this neighborhood as well. And we want it to go through. We want neighbors to be happy. We want you all to be happy. So it's definitely something to be considered. And one of the other ownership partners is not on this call, so I can't answer wholly, but it's definitely something we're considering. Obviously, we gave Jim and Steve the okay to throw it on the rendering, so we're definitely considering it.
Hey,
Yeah, and then
I'm
maybe.
sorry, I was kind of asking more of a yes or no question. I appreciate what you were saying, but I think you're
Axel
asking.
von Kleidorf.
hey, Pete.
Myth.
Pete, can you mute?
I didn't know there was any other.
Pete, can you mute?
I muted him. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Catherine, I think the consideration of maybe not having brick where it's not visible from the street or the side property lines, let's say in the back of the building. I don't know if that would be important to you, but anything that's visible from a right of way or from the neighbors, et cetera, that definitely we would consider brick.
I think what I'm asking is that you're asking for a rezoning, and what I would like to hear the team say is that you would do four-sided architecture with brick if you're asking for rezoning.
I would defer that to Mike.
Yeah, this is Pat, everybody. So yeah, our goal is to go with brick. That's what you're seeing on this rendering is what that's our wish list as well. So, by the time this gets built, it could be two years down the road. And it's really hard to say what the material price points are going to be with brick at that time. So we can't say with 100% certainty right now that it's all 100% brick on the building. Now, if using today's price points, sure, we can say that. Now, we've all seen what's happened in the last year and a half with the price points and materials. So if there's some leeway in value engineering the alley side of the building in 2 years, that'd be great. But we can tell you at this point that it is our goal to use brick and to build this out of brick on all four sides of these buildings. So it's just, Mike or I can't say with can't say 100% that is going to be what happens unless you dictate that, unless that's something that the neighborhood says we won't approve this unless it's 100% brick. Then okay, then that's what we do. But that is our goal to construct construct it the way you see it right now in this rendering.
And I would add to that as Jim said earlier, it's a lot easier to do if you're doing it from anywhere visible, the south, the north, and the west sides as brick, as opposed to the interstitial, the inner spaces of it out of an alternate material. It's definitely a lot more. It's a much easier pill financially to swallow that way, where only the back sides of the units, the interior sides of the units that are looking at each other, be some alternative material. That's definitely a much easier pill to swallow, and that's something I think that we can accommodate.
Could I ask a question?
Please, Keith, go ahead.
But I don't want to interrupt, and I apologize. My phone connection to your discussion is unfortunately very poor. The elevations you show from across Federal, of course, Federal is rather narrow. I don't know how you would get that far away, but looking at your whole building, the items that really variegate the facade on Federal are the three gables. And I would be interested to see whether your eventual design couldn't suggest a little more variety among the 5 that face federal. And then I had a question concerning the width of the alley of the driveways that are to allow people to park cars in all of these units. It looks awfully narrow. Is that, how wide are these driveways in the plan that you've shown us?
Those driveways are 20 feet, which is the requirement for townhomes in Denver zoning.
Okay, I'm glad I don't have to do it.
Okay.
Is that, I tried to share the site plan there, if you can see it. Now,
Steve, this is all in the document that you shared, so we have this online and something that we can share with the community if asked, right? This is
Yes.
all, okay, perfect, thank you.
And, you know, I saw a couple of things in the chat. Tripty, are there more questions I wanted to point out? There's some really good points that this is a parkway, and we probably have to pull these buildings back a bit to accommodate that Federal Boulevard parkway. And we're going to have to just look into that closer with the Denver Parks and Rec.
Yeah, and Catherine also had a question in there whether residents kind of within 400 feet, if that's the correct number, have they all been notified of the rezoning ask?
Not yet, because we have not filed the application yet.
Okay.
You know, when we file and we get certified as approved and ready to be processed, then the notifications start going out before the first hearing. You know, there's 2 hearings, one with the planning board, then with the city council.
Great.
So we were about 2 minutes after 7, so I'd like to try to aim for about 8 more minutes. Anybody who hasn't been able to speak yet or have questions, got questions out there? Anybody who wants to ask a second question? Then I'll take liberty to just add some personal comments, and these are strictly just personal comments from me. I want to echo Catherine's comments. Glad that you're looking at an increased setback, and also very happy about the choice of brick. But I would also echo Keith's comments that my first impression of the design was that it was, I mean, I love townhomes. I think townhomes are perfect for this location, but it is a very flat facade, and even with brick, it feels very flat. So if there's some way to use his verbiage, variegate the facade, that'd be fantastic. Matthew, you've got a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if this is designed with natural gas hookups for heating, water, and cooking, if you considered eliminating any of those.
Oh, cool.
That's something that, yeah, we can definitely, I don't know if that's been decided this early on, but that's something that we'll definitely talk about for this project.
Matthew, I applaud you bringing that up. I think that's the first time I've heard that brought up in these sessions. So I'm glad you've raised it.
May I make one more comment on the regarding the design? I tend not to mind the simplicity of the design. I actually think it's really refreshing, considering some of the things that we're seeing slapped together in the neighborhood. The one comment that I would have, the one thing that when I looked at it, I felt like the gable bits, maybe would you consider playing with the peak on those to make them a little more peak? I'm sorry, I'm having a tough time collecting my thoughts. I'm really sick, sorry. But if they were higher pitched, sorry, that's the word I was looking for, higher pitched roof on the gable ends.
Sure. And I understand that comment. I think making it a little bit more traditional looking. Mm-hmm. You know, there's certain times that, you know, I work on a lot of different types of residential projects around Denver, and a lot of times we're capped off at the maximum building height. So we can definitely make that roof pitch peak as high as we can that's allowed per the maximum building height. We can definitely do that.
And that's, I mean, I think it would look better with the higher pitch on the roof, and that would be an ask I think we'd entertain. I can't speak for everyone in SUNY, but I would certainly support a variance on height if it improved the look of the project.
Sure.
I think it would actually make it look smaller.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think it's a nice visual illusion, and you could maybe grab a little more livable space in that, under that gable potentially. I don't know. I'm the architects, obviously.
No, that's true. I mean, you can get a higher vaulted ceilings actually would help. Certain times we have a lower ceiling height at the edges of the building for whatever reasons, bulk planes, sidewall heights, etc. So that would definitely help on getting you're correct, getting a little bit more of a livable higher ceiling on that top floor.
Hi, this is Trupti. I do actually have one more comment. I don't think it's a question, more of a comment. Steve, you and I talked about, kind of some of and we're talking about some of these, right? We're talking about slight changes in design. We're talking about brick. We're talking about affordability. You and I talked, you had mentioned the possibility of, and not at this moment right now, but as we get closer, but the possibility of entering into a GNA where you guys will commit to certain things that you are saying you will commit to, so that things don't change. It's not just a handshake at that point on some of these features that we're talking about. I just wanted to throw that out there, whether that is still something, Steve, that is something we could talk about, before this is finalized.
Definitely. I think that would be the context where we would make commitments to you that you desire, such as, maybe we the setbacks, the affordability, and the brick. That's the context that I foresee that being basically tied up in exchange for your support of the rezoning.
Yes. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to throw that out there. It's something our committee doesn't do enough of. And I want to make sure that, after talking to you and being a willing partner, that we consider that for future projects. Thank you.
I want to just add too, I really appreciate the development team coming in with this much detailed information for the rezoning ask. It's very much appreciated.
Anybody else with questions or comments? It seems as though we've had a lot of comments and questions back and forth, and I think a lot of positive comments about the development, but does anybody else have concerns or questions? Steve or the rest of your team, can you speak a little bit to your timeline? When do you expect to need support for the project? When do you expect to be that far along in your timeline?
Well, if we have some optimism about getting support, I think we would want to get the application into the city. That can take 2 or 3 months for them to just get it on it, to agree it's complete, and then they put it on an agenda. So I would literally, the earliest we could probably get on an agenda is January or February for planning board. And before that, we would want something in writing from you supporting the rezone. We would need it, to be honest with you. So what we would, I don't know if it's appropriate, but for instance, we could, if we would like to meet again in a month, I could get you a draft good neighbor agreement if you're heading that direction, that could address some of these concerns, and we could discuss that at maybe in December. If just throwing ideas out there, if you're ready, I don't know.
Well,
I'd like to see that.
I'd like to do that as well.
I'd also like to see the residents within 400 feet notified of the rezoning.
Yeah, and Steve, I think this is why this is really important is we want those folks at this call. I mean, I think what would be ideal is to work together to make sure that the folks around this development know that this meeting where these types of things are being discussed and, approvals or are given, that they're part of that. I mean, I'm part of this neighborhood, but there are people who are more impacted by this development than I am. So if there's a way to get this information out to them and let them know that there's this meeting in December, I think that would be ideal all around, and it kind of covers everybody's bases.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So
Trying to think of best way to do that. It's easy and required when we go to the planning board. And it's kind of, we have to put a sign up. I'm trying to think of what would be the best way to make you guys feel like everyone's.
how about this? Would you be willing to pay to flyer those households, something we can communicate? We'll have the meeting information, available, put on there, and you guys can flyer it to make sure that they know this is happening and this is the meeting to discuss it.
Trupti, this is Mike with KLM. How about this? How about we figure out who the abutting neighbors are within that 400 feet radius that you're talking about, and maybe a little bit more. And we'll draft a letter saying that we're going to have a meeting next month. This is what we're going to talk about, and we'll send it certified mail so that we know they got it. We know that was sent, and hopefully they show up at the meeting.
Yeah,
That's fabulous.
And actually, if we can put the link to the PCD SUNI Drive, that kind of stuff. So, just get information into their hands.
Great.
So I'm prepared. If we can work together on something like that, I think that'd be great. I really appreciate you guys and your
Yeah, ownership group is 100% on board with that. We're two of us live right in this neighborhood. We live blocks away. We want to be. We're going to be in the neighborhood for a long time, so we want everybody to be as happy as it can be. So we're happy to do it.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Just keep me in the loop, and I'll make sure we have our stuff set up in time for that letter to go out.
Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, Steve and the rest of your team, the ball's in your court to come back to us with what your plans are. What I will do is tentatively pencil you in for the December PCD meeting.
Great. Do you happen to know dates, what the date is on that yet? Or
I just know it's the second Thursday of the month.
I'll look
Okay.
it up right now.
all right, no
It is
worries.
the 9th, right?
Okay, I will get a good neighbor agreement drafted, and we'll probably go back to scrub our pencils a little bit more on the setbacks for this project. Make sure you have that, because I think what you want to do is attach a plan to any good neighbor agreement that you agree on too. But the challenge will be making sure that plan meets zoning. But we'll get real close, and then we'll also start collecting addresses for those folks. Just so you know, Catherine, when we send out letters, I want to be clear, they go to the registered owner of the building, so not necessarily the residents.
I think that's fair, personally.
Okay. All right, great.
Great, thanks, Steve, for that clarification.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Yes, agreed. Thank you very much for the presentation and for your willingness to work with us on this. It looks like an exciting project. I don't see Jonathan on. Jonathan, are you on? And I just can't see you for your presentation.
We're here. Yep, LCP's here.
Oh, great.
Okay.
I think it says Chad Mitchell on ours, actually.
Yeah.
Steve and the
He's
rest of your
here
team,
too.
thank you very much.
They're jumping off.
We'll look forward
Hi,
to seeing you
Jonathan.
again in December.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Bye.
Jonathan, it's all yours. We don't have, if you missed the beginning of the meeting, the second item on the agenda had to cancel. So you've got a full 40 minutes available to cover your topic.
Great. Well, we appreciate it. I was gonna kind of kid you about that if somebody had, gave us their time. So hopefully we won't need all of it, but if we do, that's great. Appreciate that. Again, a good evening, and appreciate the opportunity to be in front of the committee again this evening. We have had a chance, I think, based on the thoughtful input we got at our last call a month ago, to try to incorporate as many of those comments as we could. And I think you guys, we provided that information to Bill yesterday, and hopefully that was circulated among the community. You've had a chance to look at that new design. You know, I mean, I'm happy to kind of go into some of the things we've incorporated, but I did kind of outline that with Bill. But I think probably the best thing to do would be to introduce Chad Mitchell, who is the architect on the project with Meridian 105. We have done another project with Chad, our Edgewater Public Market, and felt that you know, he was the appropriate architect for this project. And I think maybe that, you know, again, I can talk a lot about the design, but Chad's going to do it in a much better way. So Chad, we'll kind of turn it over to you and kind of let you describe kind of how we took from, and we realized that, you know, the last time we were in front of you guys that, you know, we gave you a massing study, which was not really specific as to a lot of things that you had questions about: materials, fenestration, street presence, access, all of those things. So I think what you've seen some of the images that hopefully address most of those questions.
So Jonathan,
yeah.
So let me clear up some logistics here. You had forwarded the stuff over to James and myself. James, because of the illness in a family, is not able to join us tonight. So he normally would have been handling this. If Trupti is able to let somebody else host and show your materials, who would you want that to be?
I could do it on my end, I think.
Everybody can host. I mean, I'm sorry, everybody can share, so you should be able to.
Okay,
share.
great. So if you can go ahead and present that while you're speaking, that'd be great.
Okay. So I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity to look at this yet, but I'm Chad Mitchell with Meridian 105 Architecture, and I've been working on this project with LCP here since your last meeting. They did pass on a lot of the comments that you guys provided, and we've made our best effort to incorporate them. So kind of to jump right in, this first page here is just our current site plan for the property. I think some of the feedback that we got from Jonathan after your last meeting was the desire to have access to the parking off of the alley, which we've incorporated as kind of a priority, and to really engage the streetscape along Jason Street. We did receive the feedback that your committee really views Jason Street as a main street within the neighborhood, and really wants to tap that potential. So what we have here on the site plan, you can kind of see our access point is along the alley on the west. We have one primary garage entry that would serve the residences. We have 62 parking stalls that's partially, some are covered in the garage, and some of them to the west of the garage are open to the sky. And of course, we have some of our utilities in the back, such as loading and transformer and things like that. Along Jason Street, really took to heart the desire to have an active streetscape. That's really kind of a very important aspect of our work at Meridian 105. We do a lot of these urban infill projects around the neighborhoods in Denver, and always a major goal of ours is to have these very active and engaging streetscapes. We think these spaces along the street are opportunities for the public to interact with the inhabitants of the building, and we think that interaction really fosters community. So what we show here along the Jason Street facade is we have a residential entry that would serve the building up top. That would probably have some sort of live work spaces, some active kind of amenity spaces for the residents of the building. Of course, the main entry and some of those functions of the building. To the north of that, we have a nicely sized food and beverage component, which we think would be a very nice restaurant. We were able to put that on the corner of the building, which we think is an advantage because we can really activate both streets, 42nd Avenue and Jason Street, and have positioned an outdoor patio that in our viewpoint right now could possibly be a shared patio between the residents of the building and the food and beverage component. And I've really thought of this patio really as kind of like the front porch of the building. And again, a component where we think people interact with the community. So a couple key points on this plan. Right now, along the Jason Street frontage, we have about 82% of the length of the building that's occupied by active uses. And that incorporates the patio, the food and beverage, and the residential entry component. We've done our best, as you can tell, to really just minimize the frontage that abuts the parking component. Let me jump to the next page here. If I can. So really what this page shows is just our thoughts on a material palette for the building. You know, one of an important aspect of our work at Meridian 105 is to select materials that we think are very authentic and very honest and very kind of close informed to the way they are when they're unearthed, so to speak. So our thoughts is that what would be appropriate here is a combination of some glass and some wood and some metal siding. What we show in the left-hand corner picture with some kind of greenery integrated into the building, and we really want to expand the footprint of the landscaping beyond just the boundaries of the right-of-way plantings that the city of Denver requires, and really have a hope to incorporate some landscaping into the outdoor patio spaces along the perimeter of the building. Right now, we're looking at a couple different material products. One is called Akoya, which is sustainably forested wood. That's like a modified acetylated pine, which has a 50-year warranty, and it's a very high quality wood with a long-term kind of maintenance-free lifespan. And for the metals, we're looking at different corrugated panels that have high level of recycled content and a good life cycle for the duration of the product. So you jump to the next page. So our idea for the building, we've got a 5-story design here. A little bit atypical, I think, from the multifamily kind of big box buildings that people are developing in Denver right now. One of the criticisms we have of those types of projects is these kind of large boxy flat roof lines that really feel like insensitive to the streetscape. So what we've incorporated in our design is just some facets on the facade, which we think are interesting to break up the roof line and relate a little bit more to the neighborhood to give it peaks and valleys, less of a boxy building form. Another concept that we've incorporated, which may be a little bit difficult to tell on this angle, is there's 3 wings to the building. It's kind of shaped like an E, like a capital E in plan. And the forward volume kind of abuts the property lines in the foreground of the view. The middle volume steps back a little bit, and the southernmost volume, which is in the background, steps back even further. So as the building geometry approaches the south property line, it's stepping back from the street, which actually allows some additional sunlight down to the street level and the sidewalk level in the afternoon, which we think is a nice advantage to the streetscape. Also, you can kind of see in this corner rendering, this is where the restaurant component would be. The patio on the right would be the north end of the restaurant, which we hope to incorporate some operable facade panels that would give some intimate seating in that area. In the middle of the view, kind of adjacent to the residential entry, kind of behind the person on the little scooter here is where the outdoor patio would be. And again, just really a goal of the project is to incorporate as much landscaping as greenery as possible to give it a nice residential feel and a nice streetscape. So this view here is really meant to convey just the character of this patio space. A little bit of the materiality. This is, our first pass on how this might feel. And again, trying to incorporate a nice scale and a nice kind of dialogue between this patio space and the realm of the sidewalk and the streetscape. It shows some ideas for how we might incorporate landscaping into this patio space. How the facade of the restaurant might open up to engage the streetscape. We think it would be an interesting concept to really feel like these spaces flow through the patio to the sidewalk and into the restaurant space. And really, again, just the concept of this patio functioning as a front porch to the building. This would be the rear of the building along the alley. Another kind of big project goal, as mentioned earlier, is just kind of the aspect of just environmental responsibility and sustainability. This canopy feature along the back of the building is actually components that we hope to salvage from the existing metal building that's on site now. They have some pretty cool large steel structures that support what's there now, and these kind of large beam shapes would be those components repurposed and kind of cut to form this canopy carport feature, and then again with some salvaged corrugated metal on top of that to provide some shelter. We hope to have some outdoor balcony space along the back, and recognize that the back of the building actually has some fantastic views of the mountains, and really is the facade of the building that starts to engage the neighborhood. Let's see. And then our last slide is basically a section through the building, which shows on the left side the alley and the right side Jason Street. There's a substantial drop off in grading from the alley to the street, which in my viewpoint is an advantage for the project, because it allows us to have some nice tall ceilings in the restaurant and entry of the lobby, while at the back side of the building actually makes the building look not as tall, because it's about 7 foot higher in grade. Of course, the challenge of that is the garage entry and getting into the parking structure, which is something that we need to work out, but there's ultimately going to be some challenges associated with that kind of level change and access from the garage into the lobby and restaurant space, but something that we have to kind of look at as we move forward. I think that might be, yeah, that's the last slide that we have. So
Chad and Jonathan, congrats. You've come a long way, and we appreciate the way you've incorporated a lot of our comments. I don't see any hands raised yet, but do anybody have any comments or questions they'd like to start with? Wow, they're speechless.
Hopefully that's a good thing.
We got a question in chat that said, what are the lot dimensions?
I think it's 225 in length, and jump in if I'm wrong, Jonathan. I think it's 225 in length, and I think it's maybe 125 in width.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So
I was just looking at the survey today. I think that's right.
So since since we're speechless, I'll go ahead and just make a personal comment. I really, I very much like the design. I very much appreciate the street activation. I thank you very much for incorporating that. I like the idea of the front porch of the building. I like the fact that it sets back and the further south you go. And actually, I don't know that your renderings do justice to the choice of Akoya. I happen to be familiar with Akoya because we're designing a line of outdoor furniture with Akoya. And I think it'll make for a beautiful building, especially with the way you're using metal and glass. So those are just my personal comments. I'm sure other people will have comments as well.
Hey, this is Tripti. So just where are you in the process, right? Is this, you're already in the application process? You already have a date set up for hearings, or where are we? Just so we can figure out what outreach can be done to your surrounding neighbors, kind of like what we were talking about with the prior development team, if you guys were on there.
I'll kind of, I think, start with that. In regarding the rezoning, we have submitted our pre-app to the city and are now working on the formal application. So our expectation is that might go out as, likely next week. So the city will have our formal formal application on the rezoning. We've also had an opportunity to have our conversations with City Council, Councilwoman Sandoval. We have reached out to the Affordable Housing Committee. We've had those conversations about what this might look like in terms of our inclusion in that program. So those steps have all been taken. We are, I think, kind of got a couple interim steps. One was obviously this meeting in terms of overall design, and if there were big concerns, then we would integrate that into our thought process. But at this point, Chad is continuing to evolve in terms of design, and I'm not sure we have a formal deadline of when we would submit for permit, but there's a kind of a we got to make sure we're far enough along in the rezoning process to make sure there aren't any issues in that. So there's kind of a balance between how far we go with our design and permits. But at this point, the really major big next step is our formal application regarding the rezoning.
Thank you. And in regards to the conversations regarding affordability, where are you guys landing on what you think that's going to be? I think you guys had something like 7% last time, something like that, or maybe it's 10. I can't.
And if I could add on to that, maybe if you could even step back and revisit how many units and give us a total picture in addition to the affordability.
Yeah, so 72 units as drawn currently. And as Chad mentioned, 62 parking spaces. In terms of the conversations regarding the affordable housing, based a lot on kind of what happened across the street, our other conversations, the direction right now would be 10% at 10% of the project at 80% AMI.
Okay, thank you. There is another one raised.
Matt, I think you've got your hand up.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, I was just wondering, that bicycle parking seems small, and I'm wondering if you can access it via that stairwell, or if you have to go all the way around the building through the garage to get to it. I'm wondering if you could put it by the residential entry, so you're using a bicycle like as you commute every day and not just storing it somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comment, and we actually were just discussing that, I think, yesterday or the day before in our internal meeting, was we might find a way or an interesting way to incorporate it adjacent to the residential entry. We haven't really determined access for where it is shown right now, but we're tossing around some ideas to how to make that a more interesting amenity for the building rather than just kind of like a bike closet, so to speak.
This is Keith Howard calling from a different phone. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can, Keith, go ahead.
I'm previous discussions of this very interesting project. Could you just clarify for my remedial benefit, are the 72 units all rental units?
They are, correct.
They are. They are. I'm curious about the restaurant space, which would clearly have the apartments which are directly above it could be affected by noise from this rental space. I don't know whether any such mechanism would exist, but if I were to rent or lease an apartment there, I would want to be sure that there wasn't going to be a development with a liquor or cabaret license directly below me that would make life impossible for me. Have you thought about this consideration?
We have, and I would say the majority of the projects we have done, probably, to backtrack a little bit, I think as we talked the last meeting, most of what we do is infill development and specifically more infill urban development and redevelopment. And it's mixed use by nature and almost by definition, we've got some form of retail at the base and residential or other office or other uses such as office above that. The interesting thing is that many residents, and I would say the majority of the residents view that as an amenity. They actually want to have food and beverage in the building so that they have that immediate access. They can go downstairs, they can eat, they can have a beverage, they can sit on a patio. That, I think and I thought maybe the part of this question might be going is that we're most careful is, the odors and the sound, and that we want to make sure that we're adequately venting the restaurant and that we've mitigated as much sound transmission as possible by virtue of the fact that this is a podium building, so that ground floor retail is going to be under a concrete podium, and the stick, apartment units above that in and of itself will eliminate quite a bit of the sound issues anyway. And then it's really more of just making sure that we don't have, odors that become offensive to residents. But, and again, I think it's, in a neighborhood like this, it's not, we're not going to put a club in there, which I think maybe is a greater issue. But to have a beer and liquor license would not be uncommon in this sort of project with this sort of retail.
That all sounds reasonable to me. I just wanted to bring it up. These are issues that can affect the long-term viability of the building.
Sure.
It's a 5-story building. Are there elevators?
Yes, we've got 2.
Okay.
You can kind of see them on that plan. I don't know if you can cursor there, Chad, or not, but yeah, right there. Okay,
I'll take your word for it. I just I wouldn't want to be climbing 4 flights under all circumstances. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Tripty, I think your hand's fresh.
Yeah, thanks. You talked about some of the reclaimed and you talked about the sustainable wood, in terms of just other green infrastructure, I guess, electric charging stations. Are you guys thinking of doing anything rooftop? Just curious whether you guys are thinking along those lines of, more sustainable kinds of things.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want me to take this, Jonathan, but
sure.
Obviously we're still very early in the process, and some of those things that you mentioned are actually requirements in Denver right now. I mean, all of the new multifamily projects that our firm is doing has some electric charging stations in it. Again, early in the process, and haven't talked to Jonathan and his team about solar or any of those other aspects, but I think as we dive in as a design team, we're always looking for other opportunities to make the project more sustainable and more environmentally friendly.
Great, thank you.
Other questions and comments?
I thought, did Matthew still have his hand up?
I was assuming it was an old hand, but go for it, Matt.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you have natural gas hookups for heating, water, or cooking, and if you considered eliminating one or more of those.
Chad, you?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really gotten that far into the design yet and don't really have a mechanical team on board. But I will say the last couple of projects that we've done have had a VRF system, which is a variable refrigerant system, which is we don't know if it's appropriate for this project yet, but has been for the more recent ones that we've done. It's kind of a high energy system and electric cooking. And we don't see a lot of gas cooking in a for rent product these days. So don't have a definitive answer, but it seems that buildings of this type are kind of trending away from that lately, and most likely would not have a lot of gas usage, I imagine, for the individual residences.
Yeah, our thoughts are that, you know, at this point, gas might be limited to the requirement for the restaurant, which will require gas for their ranges and stoves, et cetera. And in the event we've got kind of two amenity areas in the building, one a fitness center on the second floor and a amenity area on the fourth floor. Of whether that amenity area would include a fire pit or not, that would be likely the only use of gas outside of the restaurant.
Any other questions, comments?
If nobody else has another one, I'll throw something out there as well.
Go for it, Tripti.
Great. And I don't know if you guys were listening to the last development. We talked about outreach to, you know, surrounding neighborhoods as one of the things that we want to make sure that it's not the 10 people on the call today making decisions, but, you know, more people know about this, because a lot of times people don't. So, you know, some kind of outreach to the surrounding neighborhoods, you know, the neighbors around you. I know some of it's commercial, but it's really more the residential I'd be considering as well. And then also some of the things that we're talking about, like the use of gas, for instance, or use of some of the materials, especially some of the transparency and the porches and the open, you know, would you guys be willing to enter into an agreement that these are design features you're going to keep, not modify after you've gotten the approvals for the rezone?
Yeah, trivia, you know, again, I think it's certainly something we would consider. It's not something that we've typically done in a new project in Denver, but you know, again, if a neighborhood agreement is something that you feel would be a precedent or condition of your support, we'd certainly look at that. I think you know, the challenges in any development, I'm not trying to back away from this at all, is that, you know, things evolve and there are different reasons that, you know, we've had projects where we've had a restaurant come to us and want to change something, and they may say, we don't want an operable door, we don't, you know, and so there have been, you know, certain modifications we made to accommodate certain users. But, you know, I think the intent is you know, hopefully that, you know, I don't need to tell you guys about all the supply chain issues and cost issues, but, you know, we're pressing up against those every day. But the hope is that, you know, we're going to do everything that we just showed you.
Yeah, and I think it's some of the bigger things we're talking about, especially the things that you know, obviously have changed some of the designs based on what we were talking about, but, you know, nothing's final till, you know, it's actually done. But it would be some of the larger things that we've kind of given you feedback on that you came back with, and making sure those elements that were critical that we, enough for you guys to go back and change, that those would be part of it. So I don't think we're trying to be unreasonable about kind of the smallest things like what a restaurant's going to need or a door. It's some of the larger things that we're kind of looking at. So if,
I would want to jump in and say that just where we are in the process is we haven't heard the planning department's feedback yet, and generally they'll provide a list of comments from the transportation department, the forestry department, and some of their other agencies that sometimes can impact our plans, many times can impact our plans, and we haven't taken that step yet.
No, and that'd be great, because I think we'd want to, we'd want to be back talking to you guys once you've had to make changes based on some of those. So I think, what I'm talking about is, definitely an agreement, not right now, but when we're a little closer. But it's also just to make sure that this conversation continues, especially as things change, because they have to, that we're all kind of, following along here.
And maybe, Trupti and Bill, maybe this is a good, I mean, in terms of, and I know in this, and again, we recognize that the first time we came in front of you guys, we had a massing study and not, a design concept project. So I think the question is, are there, what are those things that, and maybe there's a short list, Bill and Trupti, that could say, hey, are these the sort of things that you guys can commit to? And for simplicity is one of those, access off of the alley is another, that, retail activation on the hard corner.
Yeah.
What are the, kind of I call it in the box sort of, what is that, that list want to be for, those items?
Yeah, I think that's something Bill and I and our group, and some of them are not even here on this call, we can discuss, relatively quickly. But, it's something that we're, kind of thinking about. And one of the challenges we have is, once you approve a zoning, you guys can change the design however you want. And there's no, coming back to the table about it. Not saying that you guys would do that, but this is just going to ensure that those things, some of the things you just talked about, are really the key ones for us, that activation. So it would be those things, but I think Bill, myself, and a couple of other committee members can work on that short list relatively quickly and, provide that to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And is the thought then that in terms of, the committee's, formal issuance of support, is that something that then would be conditioned on this neighborhood agreement or conversation of these items? And then what, if any, changes were resulting from our meeting, our pre-app with the city? Is that kind of what I'm hearing? That
well, I think what you're hearing is that you've been very proactive in bringing this to us, but you're kind of early in the process for us to formalize support. So I think you've got a little further that you've got to go before we would want to go through formal voting of support. And then what you're hearing from us as well is, in parallel to that, we've been struggling with the fact that when we're in these situations, we want to be able to better get commitments on things that we believe are important to the development. And so that's what Trupti's talking about. So that's kind of something that's in process that we're working on. But since you've come to us so early, we're hoping to be able to utilize that process with you.
Okay.
And we really do appreciate, you guys coming back and putting all those things that we, were concerned about. And what we do want to get more eyes on this, right? We do want to, this was just, we just actually put it into our, shared drive. We want to be promoting this a little bit more. We want to be collecting feedback from people. We want to get more comments, even as our own, organization. So we will continue to do that as well. So, I think there could be a little bit more, and whatever you guys hear back and start solidifying. So I think we're going to keep working together on this, but we're not going to try to delay you at all. And I'm pretty excited about, the project. All of this looks really good. I love the size of the commercial space that you're putting in there. So there's a lot of good things about this. Our goal isn't to delay you.
In following up on an earlier question regarding kind of community outreach, historically on neighborhood meetings like this, when they were in public or they were in person, that they became public meetings and neighbors could attend. Obviously, by doing Zoom, that it gets far more limited. Is there a mechanism of the public outreach that you guys would suggest or recommend, or kind of what are your thoughts on getting the word out?
Well, I think that falls into two buckets. And I think Tripti's already mentioned them. The first bucket is, your willingness to reach out to those people that are close to you, residents and other commercial property owners. That is really where your primary responsibility is. I think the other thing Tripti's mentioning is we're trying to get better at engaging the Sunnyside community. It's always a challenge because until a project hits somebody's hot button, they don't necessarily want to give up a Thursday evening on a Zoom call. But we are trying to work on that. But we don't consider that part of it to be your responsibility. We really think of your responsibility as making sure that you've done a thorough job in reaching out to those that are that are close by.
Okay.
So the last developer, I had mentioned, just having a flyer to be paid for with some relevant information, and it could be the link to, some of the places where this information is being housed, where the recordings of this meeting are housed. They suggested they would do a certified mail to all of the property owners. So I think either one of those as a way for all of us to say, we did the outreach. We did, as much as we could do without going in your house and pulling you out. So I think it works for both of us to our benefit that we try to engage and communicate as much as possible. And we'll do our end and be prepared and have this information available, publicly. We just want to get it onto whatever you might be able to send out.
Great.
So we've got 8 more minutes. I just want to make sure that there aren't any additional comments or questions for the team. Okay. I really do. I mean, we appreciate your willingness to work with us. And I really want to commend the work that you've done since the last presentation, because I know, we kind of gave it to you with both barrels. And I think you've really listened, and it's much appreciated.
Well, you didn't have much to work from. We understand that. So yeah.
We're very excited about what Jason Street can become, and to have this be part of it looks to be very exciting.
So the one thing I didn't see, and I know that we had that one visual with the corner where we couldn't really see some of whether it was that E form and those 3 little sections. I'm wondering if, as you guys work on, more renderings, 3D kind of, whatever modeling, from different angles that you guys do, if you guys share or update that presentation and share it with us, we'll make sure that also gets placed where it's publicly available. But it'd be great to see more of those angles and, kind of something a little bit more, virtual in a sense, rather than a still from one corner, if that's possible. Or when you guys do it, if you could share it, it'd be great.
We can do that.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Well,
guys have a great evening.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap up 6 minutes early, and thanks very much for your time. And
hold on. I think Keith said he might have had something he wanted to share from the Honey meeting. Keith, are you still?
Oh, that's a great. Thank you, Tripti. Yeah, Keith, go ahead.
Thank you, Tripti. I am still here. Yeah, the discussion of the city initiative started with the one which was referred to earlier in the previous rezoning discussion of the requirement for the developments of eight or more units to have a percentage that are income restricted. This was of the 45 minutes discussed. That was spent discussing all of these city initiatives. This occupied most of the time, and there was considerable back and forth among the regular participants of that Honey PCD meeting, who were all very knowledgeable. And so I think this was quite an interesting discussion, and I would recommend it. And if I can help Tripta, you and Bill to get access to that, I'll certainly do it. I think it's worth a few minutes to listen to.
Yeah, and I saw Amanda's newest kind of newsletter, and there was a lot of good information. And I know Naomi's starting to share with the SUNI leadership, relevant things like that are coming up to City Council. So this affordability all by itself. I mean, if you think, or if we think that there's interest in the community to set up a special meeting just to discuss this and bring in the relevant parties to have a broader discussion, if you think that's something we'd want to do, that's possible. So just kind of, I think I know I would be interested personally. But yeah, if we want to do a one-off for that meeting, we can. Was there anything else from that meeting, Keith, that?
Not that much. Unfortunately, my notes of that meeting accidentally got included in the box that I handed off to someone else, in which I'm trying to retrieve. But Naomi was present on the call. It was notable that the city is going forward with a bunch of different things at the same time, all on a rather compressed timeline, the next 18 months, basically. I think it would be worthwhile for SUNI leadership to, look over that list of links that Tim Burrs sent out for the city initiatives, and for at least some people to listen to that discussion. It was informative.
So,
I found it informative.
Naomi, since you were on the call, do you have any thoughts as to the optimum way for us to either structure something similar to what Tim did, or any other thoughts as to best practices with this? Because I certainly agree with the point Keith's making, and that is that there's a ton of stuff that's come out. And for those of us that are interested in it, it's kind of like drinking water through a fire hose. It's tough to absorb it all.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks for asking, and thanks to Keith for being on that call. I would be happy to. So what the kind of the little monthly update thing I'm trying to send out now is sort of meant to help shape those discussions. And aside from the expanding housing affordability project, a lot of the other projects are just getting going. So there's still lots of time to engage. They're barely just putting together their steering committees for them. So I would be happy to and wanted to offer this, that at PCD meetings, at least when there isn't a crazy long amount of other more pressing things, I'm happy to sort of just give brief updates on where the status of these different projects are, what's happened in the last month. Sometimes the answer might be not a lot, but I think Amanda would like us to try to regularly communicate, especially because there are so many planning department projects, to have like a nice structure where I can come and like give updates on that. So that's something that we could think about putting into the agenda.
Right.
And then specifically for the expanding housing affordability one, I know that the project leads are having a lot of meetings right now. They've had a couple of big open houses, and they're also doing a series of kind of focus open houses for people who are particularly interested in one aspect or another of the proposal. I would recommend steering people towards attending one of these already set up events. Since it is a citywide project, and just to spare their sanity, they're already doing a lot of outreach things, and it would be a lot of work for them to go to all 50 plus RNOs in the city. So they have a bunch of stuff listed on their website, and there are things that are everything's archived, and you can watch recordings of them too. But I would encourage that. If there are, of course, if SUNI wants to have a specific discussion after we look over the kind of the draft proposal, I'm happy to kind of attend that and help gather thoughts to send them to the planning department. I think that's what Honey is going to do. They're going to kind of review and consolidate, and then I'm going to make sure that Annalise Hoke, who's the senior planner on the project, gets, this is what Honey's thoughts are. So if Sunnyside felt like doing something similar, I'd be happy to facilitate that. We would need to do it before the end of the year. That is their kind of, the December 31st is sort of the cutoff for input on this draft proposal phase. Because after that, they're going to consolidate comments and actually come out with the official proposal.
I'm pretty certain that we would like to do something of that sort. So I'll be sure to follow through with you, James and/or I, in the next few days. Anybody else? All right. It is exactly 8 o'clock. Keith, thank you very much for bringing that up, and we'll be working with Naomi to get that information out.
My pleasure. Let me know if I can do anything else. Thanks.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
LCP.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.